the Tzemach Tzedek, who is the author of this mimer, referred to as the Tzemach Tzedek, the third Chabad Rebbe. So he made a statement that was already at the end of the first class, but we'll say it again, because really everything that follows is based on this. It's on the first page, right at the bottom. He's all said, mystically, all Israel comprises one complete entity, of Adam. Elsewhere, each individual Jew constitutes one particular limb of Adam. This is the basis for the mutual responsibility. In other words, our respect for one another, and also that also means that we're accountable for one another.
You're cut up a little bit, Rabbi.
Yeah, I was going to ask. I thought it was my computer, or if anybody else noticed you're breaking up. Maybe you can sit closer to the window or something.
No,
are you on a PC or a phone or?
Are you have is my voice?
You froze.
You're freezing or you're breaking up. So
I'm connected on a hard line to the internet, an actual hard line. So
maybe it's the microphone.
No.
Phone. The microphone seems.
Can't hear you, and you're frozen.
Okay. Well, how about now?
Now you're good.
All right. Well, obviously, if I'm freezing every 15 seconds, that's not going to work. So sometime, for some reason, there's a glitch in the internet. So there's nothing I can do about that. The systems are working. But how about now? You can hear me now?
Yes, but every so often it stops.
It's better now than it was before.
Cell phone. Okay, sometimes there's little glitches. You know how it works with the cell phone. As long as you're saying, can you hear me now? You can hear the person. But then when they want to start to think, then you can't. So we end up hearing is, can you hear me now? So I'm freezing again?
Yes.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I could try a different computer. I just really don't think that's going to make a difference.
I have another suggestion. Try to do it on your try to do it on your cell phone, but on the cell phone also turn on your Wi-Fi.
Right. So Wi-Fi is on. I could try that.
Put the Wi-Fi. Put the Wi-Fi on your cell phone.
Okay, I would need to. I'm going to need to send myself an invitation. Hold on a second.
You're welcome to come here anytime. Is that the invitation you're looking for?
I knew you were gonna do that, David, like yesterday.
Thank you.
A comedian.
Oh well, I do. I do come to the neighborhood from time to time. I have a son in Palm Beach, and I have a son in Inverary. So. Okay, but now it seems that you can follow me, but I can try both.
Yeah, well, I'm getting a thing on my computer that says that your network bandwidth is low, and you're shrunken down to a smaller box. But that's okay.
Gotcha.
As long as it doesn't say that your net worth is too low.
Okay. Now,
You're muted, Rabbi Rice. You're muted.
Your mute button is on. You're muted. You're talking to us, but you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yes.
but not now.
You can hear me now. Okay. The complication is the feedback coming from the two devices, and we're just gonna try this. Let's go forward and see if this works. I apologize. What are we gonna do? Technology is amazing, but not perfect. It was last week, or rather the first week, that mystically all Israel comprised complete soul of Adam. But we know the idea that basically this is the main theme, the main concept. That is that we are one entity, complete entity. All of the Jewish people together comprise one entity. So in other words, we're looking on the screen and we have many boxes. Really, it's just one box. Really, all of the boxes, imagine all of these boxes on the screen form together one entity. That's what he's saying, that all of the Jewish people, and really not just all history, we all comprise one complete our being. So that normally, in a certain way, now I can see that now that I'm on this, now that I'm on the phone, I can see I think I can see what you're talking about. I don't know. I'm not sure. You can hear me on my phone. That's fine. Okay, great. I'm not sure which one is first and which one is not. This disconcerting thing. All right, getting back to the point here. So we are all entity, all one being. Then he goes on to say that we're all one entity and the soul of Adam. So Adam, if we take a look at the numeric value of Adam, it's Aleph, Dalid, Mem, and that equals 1, 4, and 40. So Adam equals 45, and 45 is going to be a very significant number, as we've been talking about the idea of 45, and it's called, Kabbalistically, it's called Shema. All right, we went into it in great detail this week. We're going to do a little bit of a review of that this week, and the concept is that number one.
Rabbi, you're cutting in and out, so it's very difficult to hear you.
Comprised of all subsequent parts. And the Rebbe is going to say here that just like a body, your body, each part contains every other part of your body, and it's going to bring ideas from medicine and those things through, because we can't understand it. It's not modern medicine, but in our modern day, we have even a better way of understanding it. So, if you want to clone the entire physical body, right? Which part of the body do you need?
You asked the question, but you
Anybody
didn't hear the question.
Let me see if, oh, you know what?
Rabbi, you're cutting in and out, so it's very difficult to
Now I've got to
follow
be
your.
able to hear you.
You're
What was
muted,
the question?
Rabbi.
Okay. All right. There, now I'm unmuted. There's a lot more noise.
We're hearing the feedback from your.
Let's see if that works. I apologize. This is really not working very well. Now I'm back to my regular thing here. Okay, you know what? This is not working so well for me. I'm going to have to go off of my cell phone because this is just not. I mean, we're going to just have to hope that I don't freeze. Okay, if I freeze, I'll go back and go over it again. I apologize. It's because the other system with the feedback and this and that, it's can't figure it out. All right, so I was using the analogy from modern medicine, and that is, if you want to clone an organism, a being, a human being for that matter, what part of the body do you need?
The brain.
You need the brain.
You
So
need
a
the
cell from the
You need
brain,
a cell from you need the cells.
a cell from which part of the body?
The whole, I don't know. I'm not in
You
medicine.
need a
but-
cell. Actually, you need a cell from any part of the body. That is
Right.
the amazing thing. You can clone an entire organism. That means that every cell in the body has the building blocks, the DNA, for the entire organism. And Kabbalah would explain like that with all of existence is because it's like that with the human being. And the reason that it's like that with the human being is because it's like that with the Jewish people, because the Jewish people are indeed. So if we are all, getting back to the point, if Adam is this one soul, every part of Adam comprises the whole of the whole system, of the whole body, which would really mean every Jew has in him a part of every other Jew. How do you like that? So this idea
Not so
of
much.
mute,
It
right?
depends if it's good people or bad people.
Well, that's the thing. That's why we're responsible. That's why we're responsible for one another, even for bad, even for the person who we consider to be bad. And of course, the Rebbe's view on that, the Lubavitcher Rebbe taught us, is we really have to find in everyone. And now we have another
We
incentive
didn't get
because
it.
we're finding.
We didn't get what you said.
Okay. So the Rebbe says we have to find the positive in another Jew. And now we have another incentive for that. Because if you're finding the positive in another Jew, you're also finding the positive of your very own self. How do you like that?
That's good.
And if we say, well, is there anyone like that? Can we see anyone like that? But we see videos today of the Rebbe, and we can see that this is how the Rebbe related to all human beings, to all Jewish people, but really to all human beings. Always finding the positive, always seeing the positive in others, and we can all do that. The point is, so what we're talking about in a word is interconnectivity, that everything is connected with everything else. All humans, the entire Jewish being is interconnected with everything else. So if Adam is one organism, that one organism has within it all of its parts that create one. And like I said, with the analogy of cloning, you could take any part, and any part has the entire organism embedded within it, because everything is one and united and perfectly connected. And so this is an interconnectivity of all of the Jewish people. And it comes from the power of Ma. This is what the Rebbe has been talking about mystically, and we were talking about last week. Ma, Mem-He. Mem-He is a certain name of God. You calculate when you spell out the Yud, the He, the Vav, He, you spell it out in a particular way, you get the what do I mean spelling it out in a particular way? I'm just going to show you the screen quickly. You have God's name here. And when you spell out the Yud can be spelled out Yud, Vav, Vav, Daled. Yud, the way that the Yud is articulated. We went through this last week, but it's, it's a tough concept. So I'll go through it.
The
Letter, the
fill-in.
hey, the fill-in, yes, it's called in the language of Kabbalah, it's called the milui. Exactly, the how you spell the rest of the letter. So you have the shape of the letter, you have the sound of the letter, then you have the name of the letter. When you look at say the name, when I say the name of the letter out loud, it's suggesting other letters. So a yud, does a yud have a dalet in it? Good, right? So this is called the milui. So there are different ways. We're not going to get this as a whole area in and of itself. It's great for mathematicians. We're just going to stick to this point here. There's one particular way, and this is Kabbalah, pure Kabbalah. One way of spelling God's name, all of the letters add up to 45. Mem Hey. Mem Hey is of which name?
You didn't hear the question.
The 45 is the numeric value of which name did we say above? Whose name adds
Adam.
5? Adam. Aleph, Daled, Mem adds up to 45 because the creation of the human being is now an entity which is going to comprise all human beings, or really all Jewish people we're talking about here. What happened with Adam after the sin is he lost that distinction and it went on to Yaakov, but we're not going to get into that now. We're talking about the original soul of Adam comprised everyone with the power of Ma. The power of Ma is its ability to be interconnected. And we spoke last week that when God first brought about existence, from the first time that the infinite light came into being, the first time that you had the 10 Sefirot was in a world that were, somewhat individuated. There was a crash. Why was there a crash? There was in the language of the Ariel, you had the breaking of the vessels, the Shvirat HaKelim. And if we look at this chart, we have up there, this is the point of the area called the void. But soon afterwards, we have the breaking of the vessels. The breaking of the vessels, what that means is, maybe what we would call today a nervous breakdown, when there's so much stimulus and you can't handle it. And the reason that you can't handle it because none of the emotion with any of the other emotions. They were all separate and distinct. And by way of analogy, again, this is just an analogy. When you have a 2-year-old, when he is happy, he's still happy. Tantrum, they're totally into their tantrum. That's why they're not so much fun to watch. Because at 2 years old, your emotional stability, your emotional palette has not yet blended, so that each quality that you have kind of stands on its own. And and you don't have forbearance because all you know is now. When you get older, you say, okay, I want it now, but I know it'll be available later. So now we're taking the palette and mixing colors of the emotions to be interconnected. So that's an interconnectivity of the midot, of the emotions, which in Kabbalistic nomenclature, that is called tikkun. You see this word tikkun here? Tikkun is the correction. It's the correction from the tohu, from the chaos, where they could not hold the divine light. So the name Ma is associated with tikkun, with this iteration of creation where it's all about interconnectivity. So we have this amazing capacity to realize that we're all connected, that we're not, this isn't just that we're all connected. We are all one. And so even though we've each come into an individuated format, we're all one. We're all perfectly one. And when we look at one another, our spouse, our family members, and even Ben Sion, the people that we don't like, we have to realize we're all one. Let me ask you, you don't have to answer this, but are there any parts of yourself that you don't like?
Yes, some.
There you go. So there you go. So I have parts of myself I don't like that guy over there, right?
Right.
So that's it. But we tolerate our own inadequacies, and the parts of ourselves that we don't like, we still live with it as one, you know? So the same thing with every Jew. We're going to get into, this is all a very Kabbalistic idea that it's going to continue for today's class, but then we're going to move on to the more psychological and more language of Chassidus. Yes.
Rabbi,
Yes, please.
what if one of these people does something that he's really not supposed to do professionally, like a dentist or a doctor, who gives you the kind of advice that misleads you as a layperson and causes a suffering and death? And now I'm, okay, maybe I'm ignorant or stupid or something, so I don't do what I'm supposed to do when I'm supposed to do it. But this guy should have known what he was doing. How can I regard him and myself as part of the same whole? I am a very, well, I've been called a very Jewish Jew. But the fact of the matter is that this was a Jewish person who has misled me in such a way that really put me in the path of life-endangering situation that I cannot now redress.
Okay. Is this Phyllis?
Yes, it is.
Hi, Phyllis. Nice to hear your voice. It's been a while. So,
Well, I haven't been well.
well, yeah, because of this story. So let me start off. First of all, I feel very bad for what you're going through. This is a difficult thing when we have to deal with people doing the wrong thing. And imagine people doing the wrong thing just with ill intent. That's a horrible thing to have to experience. So
I don't know what intent it was. He just wanted to show off, I think. But the fact is that there was no regard professionally for the level of competence or anything. And I was totally misled and deceived, and to my great danger.
Right. But you live to tell the story. But you live to tell the story.
I'm in a very bad way, Rabbi.
Okay.
Very bad.
I'm very sorry to hear that. Phyllis, I cannot, in this kind of a format, tell you, I can give you the information, but in this kind of a format with a class with everybody involved, you're talking about your own personal, very difficult and very serious situation that you're going through. And this would really necessitate a one-on-one conversation to do it any justice whatsoever, Phyllis. So I apologize. I can't really address it. I can give you some ideas, but they're not going to help you right now because you're in emotional turmoil, very understandably so. So I could give you the answer, but it's not going to be helpful to you right now. Okay? But and I'm sorry for, if you want to give me a call or email me and we can talk in person, we can talk personally about it. How does that sound?
Something.
Yeah, because here in the class, it's not really going to do it justice.
Well, there are other situations like people who have been capos
I'm going to answer the question in a general way, not your way, because the personal situation. And I don't think that this form, I don't think it's going to work. If it does, that's great. But I'll tell you what I've answered other people. A woman was talking about a guy who basically was guilty of molestation. and he was coming to synagogue. And she couldn't get it, I don't know if he was convicted or not convicted, whatever the story was, right? So here we have, and I think we need to, I think as human beings, although what I'm going to say is very unpopular, and I might lose some of you right now, some of you might hang up right away, we have to stop thinking about horrible human beings. We have to stop thinking about horrible, horrible human beings. We have to think about human beings who make horrible decisions. Human beings who are going through horrible things inside of their own head and unfortunately can't control their life. And I told this woman, I said, what this man did, okay? And there's a way in our society to take care of it. We're not talking about that. We're talking about you yourself. But let me ask you a question. Do you think this person is acting in such a way because this is genuinely what he really wants to do? Or do you think if he could, he would stop it right away? If he had the ability to stop being who he was, like you have an abusive person who can go and God forbid, hit the people who are dearest to them and they love, you don't think that person right afterwards regrets it and says, I wish I wasn't this human being, but I just can't control myself? Most of the time, this is what we're talking about. And sometimes the people are unaware, but the fact remains, Phyllis, in any of the above situations, we're talking about human beings who traumatize because they're going through their own personal trauma. I'm not trying to get them off the hook.
The money that they can get from somebody else, maybe. Although I was willing to pay him for whatever he would have asked.
Right. Right. And I'm not saying that we should say it's okay. It's not okay, but we can always have Rahmanis even on the person, even on the perpetrator. We can always have Rahmanis on the perpetrator. Rahmanis doesn't mean you let him off the hook. Rahmanis doesn't mean that you don't punish him. On the contrary, Rahmanis might mean that you have to make sure that he gets his punishment and make sure that you go to the officials that are necessary. But what a Rahmanis, what a poor situation of a person who is acting in such a way. All right? So we can always, we always have to put the fact that there's a human being in front of us above our judgment of human beings. Put your humanity above your ideology, whatever that ideology might be. That ideology might be very correct, that this person is acting in an incorrect way, in an unacceptable way, in a way that is illegal, forbidden, and corrupt, and tragic, and etc., but that doesn't mean that he's not a human being. And if he's a human being, he's created in the image of God, and if he's created in the image of God, he is deserving of Rahmanis, compassion.
And medically and legally, that because things manifest too far further after the fact, it manifests in such a way there is a statute of limitations. You can't even sue this man, and he has communities wrapped around his little finger in terms of people thinking that he's all right. God only knows how many other people's lives been hurt.
It reminds me of this guy who died. He was a horrific fellow, and he did terrible things to people and always took advantage. And it was at his funeral. I wasn't there. I'm a Kohen. This is actually not a true story anyway. So he was there. His funeral took place. The rabbi was there and said, can anybody get up and say something nice about this guy? Everyone is quiet. Nobody is saying a word. Finally, a guy gets up from the back and he shouts out, his brother is even worse. So, Phyllis, there are terrible human beings. No. I just said there are no terrible human beings. There are human beings who do terrible things. Okay, we're going to move on from this. All right, Phyllis. And like I said, if you want to call me or email me and talk further, I'm happy to do so. So, getting back to the theme over here, right? Realizing that these people that we see in front of us are part of us. There is so much contained in this. In other words, when we really grasp this idea that the Tzemach Tzedek is teaching us here of the interconnectivity of all of the souls of Israel, we will no longer have the capacity to judge another person. You don't, when we talk about being judgmental, I don't mean having an opinion or, there are different things. We can be aware of problems that people have, but the judgmentalism. Is anybody here judgmental aside from me? Am I the only one who's judgmental? We're all judgmental, right? With our husbands, with our wives, with our kids, with our parents, we all have judgment. It's like, it's horrible. Wouldn't you love to just drop all of the judgment? Some of us wouldn't. Some of us like it. It makes us feel better and above everyone else because we can judge them. But it's silly. It just drives us meshuggah. It drives us meshuggah. So this point over here is really the antidote for all of this judgmentalism. And we're going to see later on, we're going to discuss this later on in greater detail. It's not going to come up in the discourse, but we're going to bring it up later on about how, when we see something negative in somebody else, what can we do about that? And Phyllis, we're going to talk about that in greater length. And it's not easy. It's good to start with the smaller things and with the bigger things. You can move on to the bigger things. I've had people who have wronged me horribly. I mean, horribly in life. And I worked very hard at finding the positive of these people. And it takes a lot of work, but I'm a lot happier because of it, because I'm not carrying around the resentment about these people. You know what resentment is? Resentment is a bottle of poison, except you drink it yourself and you expect the other person to drop dead. That's what resentment is. We all know, we all have these resentments, and our brain is just like totally preoccupied with it. And we're waiting for the other person because we're thinking all this negative. We're waiting for the other person. He's fine. We are the ones who are going crazy because of our resentment, because of our judgmentalism. Here, the Rebbe is offering us a beautiful, beautiful approach. We're just starting it. We're just scratching the surface. But probably, since I'm here to teach you some Torah, let's go on with some of these pages here in the language of the Tzemach Tzedek. You're all hearing me okay now?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. All right, so we went through this main idea of us all being one. And this was Adam. And the idea of Adam being totally, perfectly one is taken from God himself. Does God himself become manifest into the format of the human psyche? Yes. This is a Kabbalistic idea, but we have it even in the Torah, the fact that God, we talk about God, the wisdom of God, we talk about God's kindness, we talk about God's gevura, God's might, etc. All of these qualities are because God has become manifested. And I want to, I'm sorry, I'm gonna go back to this idea because it's a very big idea and very important to understand. God himself, God himself at his essence, or the infinite light of God, right? We should have no business relating to it whatsoever. We should have no business relating. This is an entity that is above and beyond the possibility of a human being having any relationship with God. God at his essence, simply. We know, obviously, Judaism tells us otherwise. Infinitude of God should be totally beyond any relationship. David, you wanted to say?
Yeah, I was going to say that the ability of the infinite force means that it has the ability to do whatever it wants, including relating to finite. That's within the infiniteness of the infinite power of Hashem.
There you go. So you're giving us the key to unlock the key to this relationship. But the point number one that's important to understand when we're studying Hasidus and the Kabbalah is that really unto itself, the infinitude of God, we don't just mean that God is infinite, really, because you could have you learned in geometry, you can have a line is infinite, it keeps on going. Okay, a line is infinite. We could have the the deficit of the United States is that's actually finite. It seems infinite. But you can have ideas that are infinite, right? But God is beyond that infinite. When we say God is infinite, really, he's beyond any quality whatsoever. God is not comprised of parts. He's one essential being. And so even at lower levels, when God knows something, God doesn't know something. When we know something, we use our intelligence. Your computer is called a processor. CPU, your central processing unit, that's your actual computer that's computing. What do we mean process? Can anyone define process for me?
It's a method of doing things in a certain order.
Okay, good. And a process is basically the way that two entities can interact and create something useful. Okay? So when we're thinking, we are processing. Our brains are processing an idea. We're taking an idea that we didn't know, and we're bouncing it around in our mind, and we're processing it until it makes sense, and then we accept it or we reject it, right? That's a process. Can God think in such a way? Of course not. God knows everything. Everything emerges from God's reality. So God cannot think in that way. Although it speaks of God thinking, but his thinking is without any process whatsoever. It's one essential entity. And God's knowing is not our knowing, as it says in Isaiah, for your thoughts are not my thoughts. God, right? So even the idea of God speaking and God, everything, and when we study Torah and when we study Chumash and we study anything, so we're already subject to something, another fancy word here, we're already subject to what we call anthropomorphism. Anthropomorphism is the way that we attribute human ways to God, or human ways to anything really. But in this context, the way that we talk about God is if we're talking about a human being. God did this, God did that, God thought, God said, God spoke, God loved, God hated, God laughed, right? God is really above and beyond all of that. But as Reb David told us, from God, he created space in which he would relate. And the way that he created that space in which he would relate was that he removed the revelation of who he is. Someone else could exist. That's me and you. That's the entire universe, right?
I think you're cutting out.
So God, okay, I'll go back. So God created the space in which he could relate. He could create another. So in this picture here, and that's why I created this. When we say God is here and God is there, Hashem is here, Hashem is there, Hashem is truly everywhere, up, up, down, down, right, left, and all around, it's a misconception because we're all actually happening within God. Okay? God. And within himself, right, in order to bring about creation, where did God go? Where did he bring about creation? Did he say, okay, let's start with North America? No. In other words, let's go back to what originally existed before any existence. There's just God. There's no space and there's no time. So there's no time to do it and there's nowhere for it to happen. God created space and time. God created a void. And that is, in this picture here, this is called the tzimtzum, a space in which God would not be perceived. The God's light would not be perceived. It's still there, but it's not perceived. And that's why the checkered boxes go from the orange to the lighter color. What I'm representing with that is that it's there, the light there is not perceived. And then God drew through this line down the middle, which is called the kav, in which he would bring about reality. With that, he created space and time and the entire universe. Okay? And in so doing, what God brought about was a way in the world of Atzilut. God now becomes manifest through wisdom, through Chachma, through Bina, through Dat. God becomes manifest through the emotions. And God becomes manifest through Malchut, which is the lowest of the Sfirot. So these 10 Sfirot, this is the processing system of the way that God becomes manifest. And now that God becomes manifest, he can also have a name.
Rabbi,
Yes.
with the Kav, is that 3-dimensional? Or it doesn't have any dimensions?
It's beyond 3-dimensional. 3-dimensional only really comes about in the world of Asiya. Above the world of Asiya, we're talking about a 6th dimension or a 7th dimension, or I don't know. I can't put numbers to it because I don't really know. What I can say is that they are dimensions much higher, right? Each higher dimension becomes a higher level of perception that's beyond the lower perception, right? So the 3 dimensions really, and even the 4th dimension of time really becomes Asiya. This world, by the way, you are here. We are here in this world of Asiya, this lowest world. This is the physical realm of our world. Above our physical realm, there are spiritual realms of being. The point that I wanted to express was that these are higher dimensions. God himself, what dimension is God himself? Anybody?
He's everywhere. Everywhere.
So what dimension? What number would you put to God's
Doesn't
dimension?
matter. There's no such thing as dimension.
Susan, thank you. So God is dimensionless. That's exactly correct. It's not a higher dimension. Because dimension means that you can measure it. That's what a dimension is. What are the dimensions, right? It's a metric for measurement. Everything is going to be measured in a different kind of a way. Some things are measured physically. Some things have other forms of measurement, right? The waves, the ultraviolet rays, everything are measured in different ways. God is beyond measure. God is one essential entity, but he created a way in which he could become manifest. In this format of God manifest, now we have the way that we relate to God. And like Reb David said, that God, of course, just as he is infinite, he has infinite capacity, and he has the ability to also become in a finite format, which is a little bit hard for me to understand, but that's what happens. And so we have the 10 Sfirot. When we have the 10 Sfirot, this is when it says that God created man in his image. What is the image of God? We don't mean a physical image, of course. What we mean are these 10 Sfirot. These 10 Sfirot make the image of God. They are the way that God becomes, and in a format that he can now relate, that we can relate to him and he can relate to us. And this is called Adam Ha'elyon. This is supernal man, the sublime man. This is God, as it says in the book of Ezekiel. You guys remember the vision of Ezekiel? It was on the first day of Shavuot. We read the Haftorah of the first chapter of Ezekiel. He has this mind-blowing prophecy where he sees all of these angels and everything happening above. And then it says at the very end of it, and then he saw in the midst of this energy and the clouds, he saw in the midst of all of it, he saw a throne and the image of a man. It wasn't a physical man. He saw the manifestation of the Sfirot. And that is called sublime man. And Adam, who we call Adam, below, he is the reflection of Adam above. And just as Adam, yes.
Yisrael has a question.
I know. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm on a riff. I'm sorry.
I wasn't sure if you were able.
It's okay. Yeah,
I
see
wasn't sure if you were able to see or not.
Thank you. Just as above incorporates everything, everything is united within him. Adam below also incorporates everything. Really, Adam below incorporates really the entire universe, but we're not talking about that here. We're talking about the way that Adam below incorporates every human being, in the context of this discussion, okay? So we are part of a whole. This is all an explanation of the original thing that we said. We are all part of this whole. Yisrael.
Yeah, my question, Rabbi, is that sometimes the terminology is somewhat obscure to some people. In my case, we use the term realm for the blue ovals. Okay, how we can define realm in this context?
World is a configuration according to a particular dimension. A configuration of the divine manifestation based on a certain level of concealment of God that allows something else to exist. In order for anything else to exist, there has to be a concealment. There's going to be different layers of concealment, and based on those different layers of concealment, we're going to have various dimensions. So each world is a different dimension operating with the similar system of the 10 Sfirot, all of the chambers, all of the entities and beings, and the light that it receives and the light that it creates, but each one is happening on a different dimension. So there are different dimensions of the manifestation of the divine light. How's that?
That's helpful. Thank you, Rabbi.
And this is all helping us to understand like two lines in the mimer, in the discourse. So that's the point that he's saying. Adam reflects this person above. And that's why it says, B'ni Bechori Yisrael, my firstborn son Israel. Israel is that person who is the son of God. Israel, who is the son of God. It says it in the Torah, my firstborn son Israel. You know when God said this? When did God say that my firstborn son is Israel? B'ni Bechori Yisrael. This is when Moshe came to Paro and to warn him to let the Jewish people go at the very first time. And he said that if you don't let my firstborn child go, I'm going to smite your firstborn child. You heard about the Makat Bechorot, the slaying of the firstborn in Egypt, the 10th plague? That was because Pharaoh was slaying the firstborn, oppressing the firstborn of God. Says it right in the Torah. You don't even need a commentary for that. How do you like that? And this idea of us all in this interconnected way is called tikkun, where all of the 10 spheros are interrelated. And we spoke a little bit about that. Each sphera has part of the other spherot in it. The only way the spherot can work when you have an organism is that the whole organism is one. What keeps the whole organism together is the fact that each part of the organism has every other part of the organism in it and understands the centrality of the entire organism, not just itself. The ego, right? This is all getting over our ego. Our ego is telling us, it's me. I want to say something. I want to do something. You didn't hear me. You didn't recognize me. You didn't respect me. You insulted me. You didn't me. Tikkun says it's not me. It's us. It's us. We are all together. We're all one. But we can only do that when we realize that we are indeed all one. And how do you bring about this integration? He now explains it Kabbalistically. The integration is brought about by drawing down influence from the divine name, Ma, from the forehead of the sublime man. So the name Ma is drawn forth from the forehead of the sublime man. When we say the sublime man, anybody have another name for the sublime man? I want to make sure you understand what we mean by that. That's God. The sublime man is Adam Dila'ela. And from him, we draw down from the level of Ma, the emanation of the, yes.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but how do we find achdut and light in a mamzerified world where everybody wants to be a mamzer wannabe and piratical, tattooed creatures that want to, this is almost like pre-Noah, I mean, I don't know, when I say pre-Adam, I would say, it goes back, it seems to me that you can't approach this kind of achdut that is trying to be attained, this echad, where we're trying to be one. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't seem possible.
My dear friend, I'm sorry. Who is it that's speaking? I don't hear your what's your name?
Moshe.
Moshe, I have some sharp words for you. Are you ready?
Go ahead.
Are you sitting down? I can find this achdut. You're not going to be able to.
Because I'm the madrega that you are on, I understand that through.
I'm not on a madrega. I'm taking what the Tzemach Tzedek is teaching here at face value. I'm accepting it. If you accept that we are all one, let's start with unity with the Jewish people. So what I work on this. Okay, now I'm teaching it. It's easy. Teaching it, talking about it is simple, right? Applying it, right? That's the hard thing. And thank you, Moshe, for bringing this up, right? We have to stop labeling people. What we're getting from the media and from social media and from all of this is everyone has to be labeled. Everybody has to, because once you label them, then you can put the star on them. You can put the yellow star on them, and then you can dehumanize them. It's the only for labeling people in this kind of discussion. You're doing it because that's what everyone around you is doing, and that's what you're drawn to instead of listening to people that are trying to connect to other people. When you're looking at another human being, imagine that this person was made in the image of God, and your mission in this world, if you choose to accept it, is to find the image of God in that tattooed, pierced human being.
Should we have done that with Adolf Hitler or Stalin?
If somebody would have done that with Adolf Hitler,
That's not a fair question.
I'm going to answer it. If somebody would have done that with Adolf Hitler, maybe this world would be very different. Instead, people become separate. So I want to change the focus here. It's already time to go, and we're beyond now. Just at the exciting part.
What does sublime means, Rabbi?
Man, that's the way that God exists in the format of the 10 Sefirot.
I think another name is supernal.
Supernal, yes. Supernal man. Adam Dila'ela is the Hebrew Aramaic terminology.
Thank you.
But Moshe, you know what? This discourse, we can talk about all of humankind another time. Let's keep it right now to Jewish people. Let's work on this co-religionists with our fellow Jewish people. Okay? That's really what he's talking about here. He started off with the mitzvah of loving your fellow Jew, which is hard enough. And I can tell you that there were Jewish people in the former Soviet Union who were working, who unfortunately through their works, hundreds or thousands of Jews died. And when the Rebbe would refer to them, saying that may find a way to do tshuva and find their way back into God's grace. It wasn't easy for the Rebbe to say that because he was there in that country suffering that, and his mother and thousands and thousands, tens of thousands, if not hundreds and thousands of Jews And who were the big perpetrators? It wasn't Stalin. It was the Jewish sycophants who wanted to, rise up in power, and they figured the easiest way for us to do it is to go against the Jewish people. So even
What's a sycophant?
people who want to connect people who are much more successful than them to try to be like, gain popularity. So yeah, it's tough, it's difficult, but here's something. You know what? I was a couple days ago, I was at a talk, I was at a book talk. Many authors got together. Coming, everyone who has to leave, thank you for coming, God willing. But I was at and one of my neighbors was there. Also, he had also written a book. All of the authors were talking. I came to him and he was saying, and I was telling my book, 4 Keys of Kabbalah, etc. He says, Rabbi, I'm an atheist. I said, Jerry, of course I know. You're a very frum atheist. I know that, right? He laughed because he's very, he's very much into being an atheist. And he's from New York, so he knows, he understands, a frum atheist. So I said, and you know what? If I went through your life experience and I learned what you learned and experienced what you experienced, chances are I'd also be an atheist. You see, whatever we are is to a large degree a subject, it's because we're subject to particular things in life. We learn certain things at certain times. At a time when I'm ready to learn, I get this beautiful Hasidic information. Wow, that's what's going to touch me. Or I could be traumatized by it. And we have millions of Jews, unfortunately, today. Oh, now they're passing on. They're from a prior generation who were absolutely traumatized by Judaism because of the teachers, how the teachers were, unfortunately, because of what the teachers were going through. So let's stop the trauma and increase the love. That's my message.
Thank you very much, Rabbi.
All right.
Thank
And
you.
God willing, next week we'll do a little bit more inside.
Stay safe,
Bye.
everybody.
Thank you,
Bye.
Rabbi.
Bye.
Have a good day, everybody.
You're well.
All the best.
Bye.